little storytelling, and I think it's good to highlight it. Lord, we just thank you for all the awesome things that we've gotten to be a part of, for all the great things that you're doing. God, that you're concerned about your kingdom. Lord, you came and you said the kingdom of God is at hand. Father, I thank you for your heart, and I pray that you would make us a kingdom-minded people, and that we would have the grace to see your kingdom and to be a part of it, and to celebrate and actually be a people that are salt and light and in tune with what you're doing, Lord. We just pray, Father, that you would give us a different spirit, a new mindset, Lord. And even tonight, Lord, that you would release vision in our hearts and just gratitude for all that you've done. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Yeah, so my throat's still been scratchy. It's like 2 weeks, but anyway. Okay, Isaiah 62. In verse 1, it says, "For Zion's sake, I will not keep silent." This is the Lord talking. "For Zion's sake, I will not keep silent, and for Jerusalem's sake, I will not be quiet, until her righteousness goes forth as brightness, and her salvation as a blazing torch." Yeah, Isaiah 62. The Lord says, "I will not keep silent. I will not rest, not until her righteousness is blazing like a torch, like a blazing lamp in the whole earth." You know, when Jesus came in John 5, he was talking about John the Baptist, and he was saying, John the Baptist was a bright and shining lamp, and you enjoyed his light for a time. And when he was talking about that light, it was just the beginning of this breaking out of that light. It was just the beginning. And when Jesus was talking about that shining lamp, he was talking about this shining, same lamp. This bright and shining lamp. He's saying, this lamp is glowing and growing and growing, and it's going to burn until it fills the ends of the earth. That's where this is going. That the knowledge of the glory of God would cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. That the gospel would go forth, that disciples would be made in all nations, that incense would arise from the ends of the earth, as it says in Malachi chapter 1. And that even when this revival goes throughout the whole earth and the gospel reaches the ends of the earth, that even Israel is going to turn back to the Lord, and there will be salvation. It will be like resurrection from the dead. And so this is talking about Zion, Jerusalem. It's talking about the church being salt and light, being the light that's set upon a hill. That torch that Jesus talks about. You're a city set upon a hill. We're part of that blazing lamp that Jesus is he's longing. He's saying, I'm not going to rest. He said that in John 17:26. When he's praying to the Father, he says, Father, I've declared to them your name, and I will continue to declare your name until they love me the way that you love me. Because it's a church, it's a people that love Jesus with the very burning zeal that the Father has in his heart, that's going to shine, just shine throughout the earth. Literally. That's where this is going. That worship and incense will rise throughout the whole earth. And the Lord is zealous to make this happen. And he invites partners in to do this. And I would love, the preacher wants to go through all the verses because it's so good. But he says in verse 6, on your walls, O Jerusalem, I have set watchmen all the day and all the night, and they shall never be silent. So I won't be silent, and they shall never be silent. You who put the Lord in remembrance, take no rest, and give him no rest, until he establishes Jerusalem and makes it a praise in the earth. It's remarkable because the Lord is saying, I'm not going to be silent, and I'm not going to rest until this happens, and I'm inviting partners in, watchmen that I'm going to set on the wall that are going to put me in remembrance, meaning pray. They're going to cry out day and night. They're not going to be silent. He's saying, don't be silent. Don't be quiet. Don't let me rest until I do this. Isn't that amazing? That the Lord invites his people in to partner with him, even in intercession, even in birthing this thing, that he would put watchmen on the wall because he longs for this to happen, but in partnership. You see, I want you to partner with me, not just in the doing of it, but even in the birthing of it, even in the crying out for it. There's a zeal in the Lord's heart. And yeah, so I want to go on the sermon here. I'm starting off as a sermon, but I just wanted to share that verse because that's what this church is about. It's more than just being a church. Is that we have been called to be a people of prayer. This is a house of prayer with watchmen that are set on the wall and called to call out and cry out and give the Lord no rest. And that's what makes College Station House of Prayer who we are. Yes, we're a church and we have mandates, but our primary mandate is the prayer room. And we have mandates to reach children. Okay, we've got a mandate for missions. We've got a mandate to teach and train. Those are 4 mandates that the Lord highlighted from the very beginning. And every church has specific mandates. And what makes College Station House of Prayer the College Station House of Prayer, what I call our unique identifier, which is kind of tech terms, but the unique identifier of this church is that we are a people of prayer. That we're a people not just of prayer, a people that contend corporately in prayer. That we gather. So right now we have our Thursday night prayer meeting. There's always been a prayer meeting that has been consistent and corporate from College Station House of Prayer in different forms, different times, some more and some less. But we've always had a prayer meeting. And that's what makes us specifically who we are. If we let go of that, not that I'm saying we are going to, or that I even fear that, but just theoretically, if we let go of that, then we cease to be who we are. And in my mind, I'm like, there's a lot of great churches that I love, and there's a lot of great pastors I love, and I would be happy to go there and hang out. So I would. If we wouldn't be who we are, but we're going to be who we are. So that specific mandate, well, because sometimes people get afraid or worried, or well, what about this? What about this mission? What about that one? Nobody's saying that we're not a part of that, or we're not doing this, or we're not doing that. But you have to know what your specific mandate and calling is. Even as an individual, you cannot be, truly a jack of all trades, at least spiritually. You've got to know who you are and what you're supposed to do. Otherwise, you're gonna run yourself into the ground. So I'm just gonna go back a little bit. I'm gonna talk about this specifically. And go back a little bit, and I'm going to share a little bit of my story, but really for the purpose of sharing some of a little bit of the history that I know in this area. So I came here to go to college, and it was 1994 when I came up here. And after I got saved, I ended up going to this little church called Brazos Community Evangelical Covenant Church. It was a little church with a big name. Yeah, and it was at least this size, but we were in a cafeteria somewhere. So at Rock Prairie Elementary actually was where we were first. It's like a little church plant. And when I came into the kingdom, the Lord, and I guess I inherited this from my mom, but just really put a spirit of prayer in me and a hunger to get before the Lord and worship. And so there was this group of people, and they were about prayer. And actually the 3 I's. The pastor was Larry Smith, and that's where I got from. The intimacy, intercession, and influence. And he talked a lot about intimacy, but there was a real heart of worship and prayer. And so that was the environment that I got around and started to grow in. And when I was in this group, we would go over to Aldersgate. And Aldersgate Methodist Church is not your average normal Methodist church, let me tell you, friends. Okay, so this church was, and I don't know the full history, but Mary could tell you that Terry Teckle was the one that started that church and was adamant that church be built in prayer, that it would be built in prayer. And I'm glad to say that even CSHOP has been built in prayer. If you look at our history, it has been built in prayer and is going to continue to. So Terry Teckle had that real heart, and so when I came on the scene, I don't know that Terry was in town anymore at that point in time, because all I remember is Bruce. But still, you had this strong crew of intercessors that prayed and contended. And many of them were very seasoned, had already been around for a long time, and were praying and contending for this area. So when there was a prayer event, we'd go to Aldersgate. We would join up with them. So I got to kind of be around that, and I learned that there are people that have been interceding and praying for this area for decades. We were walking on the prayers of the saints. You know, I remember when that finally hit me one day when I realized, and it was like I could just see incense just rising and realizing that it was like incense coming from past generations and decades, and I got so excited. It was like, wow, we are walking on the prayers of the saints. You know, just as I would even hear the stories being around some of these other intercessors, Darlene Beard, and, you know, so Brazos Community eventually became what's today Life Church. Okay, so and just if you're wondering where Brazos is, it's still around, it just has a different name. Yeah, we went from Brazos, we went to Brazos Community, from the Evangel Covenant, went to Brazos Community, and then we always called ourselves Brazos. And then eventually, there were so many Brazoses in town that we changed our name, because people would show up, and it was fine. It was like, hey, they were looking for Brazos Fellowship, or Brazos, you know, Father's House Potters. I don't know what they were looking for. But, you know, we needed a unique identifier. So, it's electric. So anyway, my point is that there are, and I'm not naming all of the different groups and crews that I don't even know about, who, you know, really, if you want to go to historians, you got to go find some of these intercessors that would know more. But there are so many groups of people that have prayed, and so many grandmas that we don't even know about that have prayed and prayed and prayed, going back, you know, the past century, or I don't know how long the history is for here, but my understanding is at least, you know, 90 to 100 years of prayer and intercession. So then, in October of 1999, I used to like to go to Kansas City and get refreshed, and so I went with some friends, and we were going to this conference, and thought, you know, we're just going to go up there and just have some fun, and, you know, find a place to sleep and go. And we were going to a spiritual warfare conference in Kansas City, and we had no idea what was about to happen. Because we go up there, and it was me and two or three other friends, it was three friends, and we go up there, and it turns out it was the launching conference of IHOP. I mean, they had launched, but it was the conference where IHOP KC was explaining what they do and how they do it. And we had no idea, right? It's because other conferences were always at Butyl Hall, they were big. And here we are, we're inside the church. It was smaller, you know, there wasn't as much interest. Let's just put it like, I mean, there was interest, but it wasn't as big. And so Mike Bickle's talking about how they do this 24/7 intercession thing, and this prayer thing, and we do worship and music, and we did it, and instead of worship, we would do the harp and bowl model, and it was awkward. He's like, you know, he's like a coach. He's going, just breaking in the middle of it. Okay, now everybody start singing, and I mean, it was like a training camp. But it was amazing, and we thought, oh, this is amazing. And Bill Ginsky went separately. He went to our church as well. And so we were like, let's do this. So in November, we came back, and in November launched BVHOP, Brazos Valley House of Prayer. And so we started doing harp and bowl, and it was rough and ugly. You think this is small? You know, this is amazing. What happens on Thursday nights? It was bad. But we have people here that were part of that, like the Von Gottens were part of it, the Pattersons were part of it, Kate Jackson used to be a part of it. I'm not sure if I'm leaving anybody else out, but they used to come to that. So BVHOP went on. What happened for me was, after about 3 years, I always had a heart of prayer, but I let go of the vision for corporate stuff. I just kind of backed away from that. And so BVHOP went on for another several years, and then died. Like, truly, it died a true death. So, but it was good. It ran its course. And while I was part of House of Prayer stuff, I was told things like, you know, this is just youth. This is just young people. This won't last. This is just a fad. Yeah, 30 years later, you're like, oh, well, guess not. But the thing is that I did really let go of that part of my heart personally, and still was in church leadership. I've always not tried to, but just always ended up being in somehow capacity, and so was doing the Christian thing. But over time, on the inside of me, because I was no longer I don't know what, like, there's just this part of me, you know, just like you, when there's that part of you that you're designed for something, if you let it go too long, it goes into atrophy. I mean, it's like if you try not to use your arm for the next year and 2 years, what's going to happen to it? it's just going to go into atrophy. Eventually, you won't even be able to use it anymore. And that was happening with me on the inside. Something was so missing. And Lori and I, in that time, got married. And so we were just going on, and we were great Christians, and you could come up and get prayer from us and, probably cry because the Lord would touch you. But on the inside, something was really missing. And we were just kind of straying and drifting and just not in that place where we had been. And then you realize what you had, and you tried to get it back. You try to get the prayer meeting going. You try to rally people together. You try, and you realize that was a true work of God. That was a true work of God, because it's not as easy as you think. Sometimes you can try to make it happen and try and realize, wow, you got to have the wind behind your back. You got to have the Lord. This isn't just you can start a church. You can plant a church. But you want a prayer meeting? Ooh. It's like Leonard Ravenhill said, he did say, the prayer meeting is the least attended meeting of the church. It's the least popular thing. If you want to know how popular the church is, you go to church on Sunday. You want to see how popular the preacher is, go on Sunday. But if you want to see how popular the prayer meeting is, go on Wednesday. I guess that's when they did the prayer meeting, or whatever day they did it. But yeah, you try and do a prayer meeting. So that's what we began to realize, is that really what had been going on was a true work of the Lord. And then I started to hear about this, and Lori and I personally, we had some other, I'm not going to go into it, but we personally were being revived. And we were just like, oh gosh, and this was after about 7 years. We've got to find some way to connect with what the Lord is doing. But we just couldn't. And so then we hear about these little rumblings of this Griffith family who are having little prayer meetings at their house. But I couldn't go because I was working, and they were having them at their house. And then they launched it was in, what was it? I have it down here, January 10th, 2010, what's called College Station House of Prayer. So 4 days ago, that was our 8-year anniversary. So we're right at our 8-year anniversary. So they launched it, and then they had what's called a fuel school, where they had some Justin Rizzo and a couple worship leaders down from IHOP KC, and it was like a big meeting, and it was amazing, and great worship, and just teaching on stuff. And I went because I'm like, we're right in this place where the Lord had reawakened us. And so we go, and the whole time I'm just during the worship, I'm just crying, just reconnecting with my heart over 7 years, and just weeping, and so excited to get to be a part of this up and coming house of prayer, which really was tiny. The meeting was big, but it was really tiny. And he was like, yeah, it was a little tiny. It was just a little group of people. And so we started going to the Barbara Bush Center. It's not there anymore. It's on University. It got knocked down. So we would meet there on, I think, Saturday nights and have prayer and do harp and bowl and pray. And then eventually it became a church. So then there was like a Sunday, house church thing. But we would meet, and the prayer meetings were small. They were smaller, definitely what we see right here. And then we moved over to the Bridge, which was at the time off of 29th Street and Coulter, real close to there. And we would meet there on Friday nights. And those meetings were tiny. So we'd have, most of the people would be on the worship team, and then there would be times where there's only 2 people in the room, because there were other people that had to do the kids. And somebody else had to run out to go do something else. So usually it was really small. So we were just doing these tiny little prayer meetings with a worship team and just being faithful. And then having a Sunday house church kind of deal. And then we moved out to Welburn that's where we grouped up with Living Stones. And they had a building out there, it was a little place, And we went out there, and we went down to, we didn't have a way to have a prayer meeting, a corporate one, like in a setting other than on Sunday. So what we did is the first hour, we did an intercession set where we prayed, interceded, and did worship, harp and bowl. And then after that, we did our church service. And it was kind of like one thing. And we did that for a while. And then we launched, so I'm just letting you know, our history. And for those of you who do know, just to remember back, not that I can give all the details, what the different things we've done and where we've been. And so you remember we launched Samuel School, which was a small house, what do you call it? Homeschooling co-op, yeah. So like little kids, like super little kids. And that allowed us to have some prayer meetings during that time. So the moms would rotate in and out. And that was the first time that we kind of actually launched having more hours, in a sense, of a prayer room. So we did that, and then eventually we found this place, and we're able to move in here, and and that's when we were able to, I don't remember over what course of time, but we added some more hours, and we still had the Samuel School. That was kind of the core, was in connection, in conjunction with this small preschool homeschool co-op. We basically started a prayer room, but somehow we always found a way to keep the torch going, to keep that torch. I think of Leviticus 6:13. It says, don't let the fire on the altar ever go out. And for us, it's just a matter of keeping that consistent corporate prayer. It doesn't necessarily mean, oh gosh, we've just never had fire on the altar because we've never done 24/7. No, there's been fire, and it's been, transferring and transmitting, and we just constantly are having prayer meetings. So anyway, that's how we ended up where we are now. There's a lot more to say about that, but anyway, I don't know. I'm just kind of trying to go through some of the memories, and just to remember that even there were times where it was just so small, and to never despise the day of small beginnings. And you know what? The day of small beginnings sometimes turns out to be longer, like Zechariah 4:10. When the Lord speaks through Zechariah the prophet and tells them and commands Zerubbabel, Joshua, and the people to not be discouraged in the day of small beginnings, you have to understand they had come back from Babylon and started building the temple for a couple of years, and then went about 16 years because they were so discouraged. And we're talking about still in the day of small beginnings. So he's coming up, and Haggai's coming up and encouraging them, and it's still going to take them another 5 years before they finish the temple. And then they've got the wall problem, which still takes them decades to settle before Nehemiah comes and knocks that thing out, right? So I'm not saying it's going to take that long. My point is that the day of small beginnings sometimes sometimes that's the biggest thing that trips people up, is the day of small beginnings. That can be the place where we can most miss what God is doing. And so, man, the Lord has done some stuff where we were small, and we're not as small as we were, but it's just good to remember what he's done and where he's gone, and that he does not need something huge in order to get something going, like a real men's conference or an EP project, whatever it might be. So, I'm going to pull us up to date. This might sound like rambling, but I'm trying to share a little bit of the history and a little bit where we're going. So, this past year, we were just within this year, so much has happened that I can't really review, and some of it I don't want to, but there have been many things that were really good. Like last spring, we were talking about moving out to West Bryan, and just the vision that the Lord was giving us, and just moving in our hearts, stirring our hearts. We knew that our lease was coming up to the end of 2, and then we would have to renew the lease for 2 years, which we can barely fit our kids back there right now. And really, we've always shared this building with Living Stone, so we really can't continue to go on in this building by ourselves, which we have for the past 2 months, but not for the next 2 years. So we were right at that point. We're saying, well, we don't feel like we're supposed to stay here. So we were really, and we really couldn't. And at the time, they were going to go up on the rent too. So we were like, it's definitely not what we're going to do. So we're looking and praying, and we really felt the Lord telling us and calling us and stirring us out to West Bryan, specifically at the bridge. And I'm not going to go through all that if you're not familiar, but and we still do outreaches out there and everything. So that was really good, and there was a lot of stirring. And the way I was viewing it was, this is what the Lord is saying. The Lord is stirring us, and we're just going to act in faith and obedience, and just praying at the same time, Lord, if this is not you, then don't let it go through, but at the same time, it was not just our idea, so we're acting on what we sense the Lord is saying, and so that's what we did. And it came down very close, but it came down to finally, I just didn't have the comfortableness level to go out to the bridge. Even though I love that ministry, it just didn't. There were certain things that didn't fit, including the fact that what I really wanted was a dedicated prayer room, like a dedicated space for a prayer room. But that was not the only problem. So it just was clear, no. But that took months, that process, and And so that didn't happen, and I'm going to kind of debrief on my view on that, on my take. And then also, we also talked about changing our name, because we still do feel called to Bryan, and changing our name because we're College Station House of Prayer. But we love CSHOP, we love that name, and we really felt like the Lord gave us some cool stuff. This is actually kind of funny. So we were talking about changing our name to Cornerstone House of Prayer, and I shared that with y'all. And then some of y'all might not even know the story, but what happened, and it turns out to be fine because we ended up not moving anyway. But there's a way when you look for your name that before you actually apply, they can run it and see if it'll even pass. And so there was a church that has almost the same name as us, and they're in Texas, and we had to get a release from them and contact them and get a release from them saying it's okay that we use this name. We didn't have the same name, but the state of Texas, they I guess decide what sounds the same and what's not. I don't know. I mean, I was like, there used to be like 50 billion Brazoses in this town. I don't know how, but whatever. Somehow, so we contact this church after a lot of work. Yeah, so it turns out though that they were like, no, we won't give you the reason for it. So whatever reason, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. So we're like, you know what? We're just gonna go on ahead and apply for it anyway, because you never know, maybe it'll just like go through. So we did, and there was like a technical error on the form, and so they were like, well, you have to redo that. And I was like, that's 2 strikes. And I told the leadership, I said, it's destined that the cornerstone be rejected. That's all I can say. The builders rejected the cornerstone, right? So anyway, we were just like, you know what, just drop it. Let's, do all the other stuff we're doing. But looking at it though, I'll just share a little bit on how I view things like that. Like when the Lord is really speaking and stirring things, when He's speaking things, there's still a timing issue. So sometimes He's speaking things and there's still, maybe there's time that needs to lapse that we don't know. But overall, I view it as when the Lord is really speaking and you really believe it's the Lord, and you start to act out in faith, that's a good thing to obey. Because I honestly felt like we would be disobedient by not acting on what we're, and taking the actions and steps we needed to. And I just remember when we used to go to ministry team training at Calvary Community Church in Houston, way back, where they would teach us how to pray and hear from the Lord, listen and pray for people. Steve Meeks used to say, faith, and it's probably from John Wimberly, I don't know, faith is spelled risk, R-I-S-K. That's how you spell faith. And so when you're praying for people, or you're going to share and listen to the Lord and share things, you have to be willing to step out in faith. And that means that you're just going to go on ahead and do it. And they might look at you like, I don't know what you're talking about. And they might say, no, that doesn't mean anything. I mean, have y'all ever had that? Anybody who really tries to pray for and you share something, sometimes it's like spot on. They're like, how did you know that? Other times they go, no, it doesn't mean anything to me. Well, that's part of growing in that gifting of hearing from the Lord is taking that little. He who's faithful with little is given more. And so we have to be willing to risk. And the Lord even looks and says, hey, next time you'll be given more. You were faithful with that. Sometimes the Lord gives us things or even prompts us in directions, I believe, that don't end up the way we imagined. As a matter of fact, oftentimes, words that come to us don't turn out to be the way we imagined. Like Joseph, he has the dream. That's a pretty dramatic one. He has a dream about the coat or about the brothers and everybody bowing down to him. It does not come to pass as quickly as he imagines and the way he would ever have dreamed, right? So the Lord tends to do that, and I think one of the times that I learned this is when I was still, I don't know if I was in college yet, but I still would go back. Yes, I was in college. So I'd go back home to Houston and visit my family, and one time, because my car was registered here in the Brazos Valley, and they had this new emissions test that made your registration fees go up. So I drove out of town, out of Houston, and went to Fort Bend County. So it was like 20, 30 minutes away from my parents to go, just to get that, to get the registration cheaper, because I didn't have to do the emissions test. So I drive way out there, and I'm just, in this, it was really my season of I'm in the Lord, and what, that was Eric's on fire season for, first 7 years of his life or so. And so, I'm just in the presence of the Lord, and I bring my car out there, and the guy does my registration sticker, and it's, I don't know, it's not quite the next month, but he tells me, he's like, yeah, I went on ahead and just put your registration for next month, you know, and instead of this month, and I'm kind of, huh? He's like, yeah, I mean, but, you know, I don't know why he did that, but he did. So I you know, I'm like, okay, well, whatever. So I'm driving away, and you know when you've really been kind of in the presence of the Lord and just fellowshipping with Him, if you've ever been in one of those seasons, and it's like something shifts and changes, and I just had this sense like, what's wrong? Like the fellowship just wasn't going with the Lord then, and I'm driving, I'm like, oh Lord, do you want me to go back? Oh, you want me to go back, don't you? You want me to turn around the car and go back to this shop, don't you? So eventually I'm like, okay, yes, I gotta go back. So I go back, and in my mind I'm imagining I need to go back. I'm like, okay, I don't know what it is or why the Lord wants me to go back. He didn't really tell me. I mean, it's not like He tells me stuff, you know, like, hey, Eric, thus saith the Lord. You know, you just gotta go with the unction of the Holy Spirit. So I go back, and I'm thinking, oh man, you know, like this was wrong. This guy gave me the wrong. I'm gonna just tell him like, hey, give me the right month, and so that's what I did. I tell him his name's Chuck, and he, you know, actually he's probably not much older than I am, and I'm sitting there telling him like, listen, man, I said I just basically told him, you know, I just got convicted. I feel like the Lord's like, this is not cool. You know, I need to come back, and this tag needs to be replaced. And he's like, there's no way I can do it. It's like in the registration books and this. He said, I can't, man. And as he's telling me that, I'm going, I know why I'm here. And it wasn't because of the sticker. And he looks at me right as I'm thinking that, and he says, do you really think that God sent you here because you're supposed to change your registration sticker? And I was like, no, actually I don't. I'm here because of you. And I started talking to him about the Lord. And then he met me like at a McDonald's on his break, got saved, and it was awesome. So this guy, and then he comes and we're getting together with our friends and we pray and worship. And you might say, well, that's just kind of random kooky. But I learned then, and I've seen it happen many times. Sometimes the Lord sends you a certain way, and you get there. Like when Abraham got sent to Canaan, I mean, that's a really big deal. And he gets there in the next chapter, where is he going? Egypt, because there's a famine in Canaan. It's like, what do you mean? I left Babylon, I went with my family to Haran, I made the trek all the way across, we're in Canaan, and now there's a famine, I gotta go to Egypt? Yeah. Really? So the Lord is privy to doing this kind of stuff. You know, He does do this kind of stuff, and so it helps when God gives us words or things like that to interpret, and not just say, oh, that meant nothing, or it didn't go anywhere, because maybe it's a matter of interpretation or direction. Just don't know exactly how it goes. If you think that might be a coincidence, I will tell you it's not a coincidence, because guess what? My spiritual father, well, he was kind of like my spiritual dad, not much older than I was in town. We used to like party together, but he got saved, and he had been saved longer than I did, and so, you know, here he's like teaching me how to get in God's presence, seek His face, and all that. Well, his spiritual mom went to Encourager Church, and she had been interceding for her daughter who was wayward, who was living with her boyfriend, and, you know, just said really straight. And it turned out this 30-minute drive out of town, this guy that lives way over here is roommates with that girl's boyfriend. They all live in the same apartment. Yeah, in Houston that doesn't happen. I don't know if y'all, I mean, maybe for Bryan, you know, BCS, but in Houston, you know, just does not randomly happen. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this lady's been praying for this girl, and God poured out the prayers on the kid. You know, maybe she wouldn't take it. The prayers went on Chuck. But I was like, girl, you are in trouble, because Holy Spirit's after you, man. It was kind of a motley crew out there when I meet with them, but she's probably in the kingdom now. I can only bet. I don't know how she got away. So, my point is that sometimes the Lord speaks and directs us, and it's best to say, you know, it wasn't all for naught. You know, and even if you've had someone in your life that was a spiritual leader and turned out to have a moral failure, or turned out to have something that, you know, it was like shocking, and you're going, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened, and you feel betrayed. And that's not uncommon, where somebody will feel really betrayed and go, you know, almost feel like none of this was real. That's not true either. Just a side point. You know, I'm just making that side note, because I know it happens, and it's not true either. The things that God did through that person and imparted to your life was still legitimate and real. No, it doesn't give credence to what they did or didn't do, but it just means we still have to realize God is still in the business of working through broken people and through our inability to fully understand what he's doing. He has his way of circuitously getting us where we're going, and it doesn't usually happen as quickly as we want and the way that we want, but he is very wise and very capable of finishing the work he's started. Okay. So anyway, that's sort of my debrief. I'm debriefing with you guys there on this past year a little bit. Not all of it, but some of it. And so here we are. We're almost up to the end of our 6-month lease. So what we did is we extended our lease for 6 months because we couldn't go out to West Bryan. And, well, we extended it through the first weekend of March. Okay? So I'm going to share with you guys just a little bit of what we're doing, where we're going. You know? So I'm sure some of y'all are aware, but it's really easy to get used to just being here and being like, no, we're just going to be here forever. No, we're not going to be here forever. So we have, I don't know if we'll actually be in here that last weekend, the first weekend of March, but we have through that first weekend. But we will be moving, and we know where we're going. So, yeah, which is really good. And it's in Bryan. It's not the west side of Bryan. Right now, we feel like if we went back and pursued that specific area, it would be us. It would just be not what the Lord's, that's not what he's on. It might be a time for that, but we're going to be, if you're familiar with Life Church, and I was sharing Brazos Community Church, Life Church, we're actually going to share that building with them. Yeah, which is really, really good, really exciting. We're going to be, we really only have one other option for a while, and it was just kind of the natural. It's like, we need to do something. This is the natural option. But I was like, Lord, if you got anything else, you could just let us know. But we have to do the practical. And I can tell you this story some other time, but the Lord really did confirm and give us some really, like, the way that it was brought to our attention and the way that it all happened was really exciting. So we started that process, talked to Paul. I'm very good friends with Pastor Paul, and they're very giving and being very giving towards us, and so it's a great location. It's right behind HEB at the Tejas Center, Villa Maria. So if you know where the Tejas Center and Joanne's Fabrics, it's right behind that. Okay, so it's a great location, plenty of space, like 11,000 square feet, something like that. So way more than, yeah. I think the stage is like the size of our little building here. So right now we will be moving there, and yeah, it's really good. And it's a good fit because I know that there's several at their church that are very interested in being able to even come to our prayer meeting, which they could anytime. But and there's some things that we can connect on and do together. Like they're interested in helping with our children's outreach in the summer and things like that. So that's the plan, and we'll be letting you guys know more about that. But we will be leaving this building, and so, but there is a place for the kids, and there is a place for us, and there's lots of places for us there. It's so big. So, yeah, there's a place to grow. So, yeah, you can go on and pass that on to people, and we're excited because we really feel like we connect with the leadership there, and that there's a real relationship. It's kind of like with Living Stones. There's been a real relationship. We're not just dwelling in the same building, and so not just being roommates. So I'm very excited about that, and we will continue to do our Thursday night prayer meeting and our Sunday. And so as of right now, that's what we have is our Thursday night set, and that's really where we carry our torch. And I really am excited about the Thursday night. I really feel like it's time to grow our vision for prayer. And to grow our ability in inviting others in like I don't know, but I'm really hoping to invite other people into the city more, but learning how to do that, how to help people engage in prayer, grow in prayer. Some people just want to learn how to grow in their personal prayer life. They're not necessarily wanting to intercede for the city or the nation. So there's a place for all of it, but learning how to do that as a body together, to actually cultivate and stand on the wall together, and to know how to bring people into that and equip them and to carry that vision. So I mean, I look at it and I think that the Lord, you know, whether we've had prophecies about us being like a fire and launching fires out. So it's not so much about us having tons of people at our church in our prayer meeting as it is if even out of us spawns prayer meeting after prayer meeting after prayer meeting after prayer meeting, and church after church starts building a corporate prayer meeting that's sustainable. Because what's allowed us to sustain our prayer meeting for so long has been the model that we use in the vision that's in the hearts of the people. Because what makes a prayer room is the people that are in it, you know. And so we have this mandate for the prayer room, but what we're doing is we're building people who carry that fire in their hearts. And what we're going to do is grow. We've been growing in it, and even right now, I want to clarify the difference between vision and strategy, and that. So obviously, we're doing housekeeping here, y'all. You know, I know. I'm letting you know it's not a sermon, right? But very practical. But the difference between vision, our vision is we have a mandate for a prayer room. I want to have a dedicated prayer room. I don't know exactly what it all look like. Don't let that scare you, you know. Because I don't know exactly what that fully looks like in this city, in this town. You know, the Lord, and that's something that's on my heart is, Lord, we want to be who you created us to be. Not just this church, but in this city, in this region. The Lord has purposes and plans. The same things that were stirring in Terry Tekel and my former pastor and all these other intercessors are still, we get to jump in on what it is. But we have to find out what it is that the Lord has for us. We know it involves prayer and intercession. And for a specific people group, for us having a prayer room. But what exactly that looks like, I think of Mike Bickle telling the story of them having their big quote on the wall about doing 24/7 in the spirit of the tabernacle of David. And people would come up to him and go, so I like that quote. What does that mean? And he's like, I don't know. I mean, for so long he didn't know. He did, but he didn't know what it was going to look like. What it was going to look like. And what is it going to look like in this city? We don't know. That's not something that we have to understand. Vision, you know, Abram, go to Canaan. Does he know what it's going to look like? No. Does he know what it's going to look like with his descendants? No. But we're in the process right now. So what we do right now is strategy. We do what we believe God is telling us to do, and I call that strategy. So when we merged our prayer set on Thursday, we had 2 prayer sets back to back. For a long time, there was a rumbling in my heart about merging those. But we waited until we felt the time was right. You know, there's just intercession, guys. That's called travail. Travail. So we'll talk about that at another point. So like, I'm just giving a for instance that when we merged those 2, we didn't have to. If we hadn't have, we'd still probably have a very similar, we'd have one prayer set and then the one right after, it would also be very similar, be fine. But we waited for a while until we felt the time was right and we merged it. And really because we feel that the strategy, and it's still the strategy of the Lord, is to unite people and to really get that vision and that fire growing in our own hearts. To actually fan that flame. And I think that now the strategy is to not only fan that flame, but then to learn how to carry that and transfer it to other people. To learn how to get other people to engage in prayer meeting in all of the ways that we can do it. Because, because even for us, we have to get this in our minds and understand that a prayer meeting, even on a set, when we're praying, not everything being prayed for has to be prayed from a microphone. So we have to learn how to engage and teach other people how to engage, that this is not a spectator sport, right? Yeah. So I really believe that the Lord is growing us in this area, and that's called strategy. That's not the end goal. It's just where we are. And the strategy is doing what the Lord tells us to do and obeying, or what he senses for us to do. So I just really wanted to share that. I believe the Lord will not remain quiet and he will not remain silent. That's why he stirred on the hearts. That's why when B.V. Hop died, even though there were other intercessors, I'll go back to that. You know, when I was part of Brazos Valley House of Prayer, I remember one time one guy, we couldn't get together and pray one night because ice or something. And we only prayed once a week, just like we do now. But I remember somebody said, and it wasn't a big leader, but he said, you know, I felt the grief of the Lord because there was no watchman on the wall praying and interceding. You know, and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to have an arrogant spirit. There are people praying. Now, we are called to join in. That doesn't mean, oh, other people are praying and I'm not going to join in. But we're invited into something. But there are intercessors in this town. There are grandmas in this town that will pray us out of this room. Okay? And we don't even know their name or what church they go to. Maybe they can't even get out of bed and go to church. You know? So I don't want to have, and I don't think we do, I'm just saying this, I don't want to have an elitist spirit. It's just we get to get in on what God's doing and follow the mandate and the strategy that God is giving us. Okay? So he's always awakening and stirring. So when B.V. Hop died, you know, later come the Griffiths, and the Lord starts raising up another house of prayer. Is that a youth thing? Is it a fad? No, it's not. The Lord begins to raise it up again. And it proved to me, as a married man with kids and a job and a whole different season of life, no, this is not just a youth thing. This is not just a fad. This wasn't just youthful zeal. This is what God's doing. And I could truly then say with confidence, the next go around, no, this is what the Lord's doing. And if I don't get in on it and we don't do it, somebody else, the Lord will raise somebody else to do it. And he always does. He's always raising up his people to do his work because he won't remain silent. He won't be quiet. If you've been stirred, if you've had that resonate, either just to go back to church or to seek the face of the Lord or grow in intimacy or to actually stand in intercession, it's because of God's faithfulness. Isaiah 62, he says, I won't rest and I won't be quiet. Yeah, that stirring, that prodding was the Holy Spirit coming and prodding you because God promised that he will not be quiet. He's like, you might let your fire die, but I'm not going to let it die. I'm going to come back. I'm going to haunt you until you wake up and you get up and you start pursuing me again so that you get out of that atrophy, you know, and that pursuit. So all of you probably can think back at the times that you know, wow, the Lord reawoke me or he redirected me or he drew me back. That was his promise, Isaiah 62. He's not going to be quiet. And he's inviting people in. And that's what this house is about. That's what we are about. We don't know exactly how it all works, but we know that God is doing amazing things. We know that even the things like the Real Conference and the EP project and these different things, those are all manifestations of the kingdom of God. Just getting to be a part of what God is doing. Just the people who cry out and intercede, and then God starts to birth ideas. He starts to birth vision. He starts to birth vision in Tom and Sam, and something starts to happen. You know, that's what the beauty of this is, that we get in his presence. One of the glories of standing in his presence and interceding and crying out, and people are afraid, oh no, if we pray too much, we're going to forget to preach the gospel. I'm like, no, you got to run into Jesus. And when you run into Jesus, he's going to tell you exactly what to do. And when you get that fire in your bones, you're going to do what he called you to do. And it might be to go and deal with social justice, you know, injustice, or it might be to go and preach the gospel to the ends of the earth. But the point is that we need to run into Jesus, you know. We got to lay hold of him. So, sorry for all, I don't know if this all made sense for the kind of randomness, but I just wanted to share rather than preach. I've got so many things on my heart about this, and I believe it's on the Lord's heart. I do. I don't think there's any, even when I think back to Brazos Community Church, one of the verses that helped launch that church was the Lord speaking using Haggai, saying, the people say, it's not time to build the house of the Lord, but it is time to build the house of the Lord. He says, go up into the mountains, get the timber, and build the house. Amen. And I still feel that invitation from the Lord. Build the house of the Lord. Go up into the mountains, get the wood, and build the house of the Lord. Don't give up. Don't despise the day of small beginnings. It's still really small, and there's so much more to be done. So much more that God could do and that he will do. So anyway, here we are. I lost track of time, but we're going to go in and get the worship team up. We got a few minutes. We will, and if you have any questions, you can always ask me. But I was just trying to share a little bit of the story, a little bit of where we came from, a little bit of my perspective. Maybe at the worship team, we got a few minutes. If you want prayer, I would like to pray for you. I know that a lot of people in this body feel that call to stand on the wall, and I just want to encourage you. Let the Lord breathe on that, and let's move into the next season. As we go to Life Church, you know, it's going to be actually kind of fun getting together as a body and moving stuff and deciding what we're going to keep and let go of. But more than that, moving in and carrying the flame and letting God transition us and teach us how to, I think, take it further. So Lord, we just thank you, Jesus. Thank you for your faithfulness, Lord, that you have declared the Father's name and you will continue to declare his name. That you won't remain silent, you won't remain quiet. And that you invite us in. Lord, again and again, you'll awaken your people and stir your people to join you in your purposes. Lord, I thank you that you've been faithful to this city. That, Lord, you've been faithful to those intercessors from decades ago, Lord, that cried out. That, Father, you keep raising people up. That you are faithful, Lord. We just